Commander Vextal stood on the bridge of the mighty warship and watched the stars through the viewing screen. His scaled hands moved across the control panel as he studied the data about the new species they had found. The Zapirian Empire had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years, and no one had ever challenged their power. These new creatures called humans were just another weak race that would bow before the Empire or be destroyed. The report on his screen showed basic facts about the human homeworld called Earth. They were mammals with short lives of less than 100 years. They had no natural weapons like claws or venom. They could not speak with their minds like Zapirians could. Their technology was thousands of years behind the Empire. They still used crude chemical rockets to travel between planets, while Zapirians had mastered gravity manipulation centuries ago. Vextal's superior Admiral Krexan had laughed when he first saw the human data. The humans had only just started to spread to nearby star systems. Their ships were slow, and their weapons were simple metal projectiles and explosive devices. Against Zapirian plasma cannons and energy shields, such primitive tools were useless. The Admiral had assigned Vextal to observe these humans before the Empire decided how to deal with them. The first contact had happened 3 days ago, when a human exploration ship entered Zapirian space near the colony world of Kepler 7. The human ship was small and boxy, with no elegant curves like Zapirian vessels. When the Empire's patrol ships surrounded it, the humans had tried to communicate using basic radio signals. Their language was harsh and full of strange sounds that hurt Zapirian ears. A human who called himself Captain Jake Morrison had appeared on the communication screen. He was tall with brown hair and wore a simple blue uniform. His face showed no fear when he saw the Zapirian ships around him. This surprised Vextal because most species showed immediate terror when they met the Empire for the first time. No, human captain had spoken calmly and asked for peaceful contact between their peoples. Admiral Krexan had found the human's confidence amusing. He told the human that the Empire would consider their request and ordered the human ship to leave Zapirian space immediately. Captain Morrison had nodded and agreed without argument. His ship had turned around and departed at its slow chemical engine speed. The Admiral had dismissed the encounter as unimportant, but Vextal felt curious about the human's strange behavior. Over the next few weeks, more human ships appeared at the edges of Zapirian territory. They always obeyed orders to leave, but they kept coming back. Intelligence reports showed that humans were establishing colonies on planets the Empire had ignored because they seemed worthless. These worlds had harsh climates or dangerous conditions that made them unsuitable for most species. Yet humans were building settlements there and appeared to be thriving. Vextal received new orders to travel to the human colony of New Denver and observe their activities. The colony was built on a planet with extreme weather and toxic atmosphere in some regions. When his ship arrived, he saw something that confused him. The human settlement was not built in the safest area of the planet. Instead, they had chosen a location near valuable mineral deposits, even though it meant facing daily storms and dangerous wildlife. Through his ship's sensors, Vextal watched the humans work. They wore protective suits and used simple machines to extract rare metals from the ground. When storms came, they did not hide in bunkers like sensible beings would do. Instead, they secured their equipment and continued working in conditions that would kill most galactic species. Their determination seemed foolish to Vextal, but he had to admit they were getting results. The human colony leader was a woman named Lisa Hayes, who commanded a mining vessel called the UCS Defiance. She was shorter than Captain Morrison, with red hair and green eyes that seemed to miss nothing. When Zapirian ships appeared in orbit, she did not panic or beg for mercy. Instead, she contacted them directly and invited them to visit the colony. Her boldness shocked the Zapirian officers, who expected fear and submission. Vextal decided to accept the invitation and landed a shuttle near the human base. When he stepped outside wearing his environmental suit, he immediately felt the planet's harsh conditions. The gravity was stronger than most worlds, and the air burned with chemical fumes, yet the humans moved around easily as if such conditions were normal for them. Lisa Hayes met him at the landing pad, wearing only basic protective gear. She smiled and welcomed him to New Denver as if he was a friend rather than a representative of a superior military force. She offered to show him around the colony, and Vextal agreed partly from curiosity and partly from professional duty to gather intelligence. As they walked through the settlement, Vextal saw humans working together, with efficiency that surprised him. They shared resources without argument and helped each other solve problems quickly. When a piece of mining equipment broke down, 3 humans immediately worked together to fix it using spare parts and creative modifications. Their technology was primitive, but they used it in ways that showed clever thinking. Lisa Hayes explained their goals with enthusiasm that seemed genuine. The humans wanted to build a network of colonies that could trade with each other, and eventually with alien species they met. They spoke of exploration and discovery as if these were valuable goals in themselves, rather than just means to gain power and resources. This attitude puzzled Vextal because in his experience all species ultimately sought dominance over others. When evening came, the humans invited Vextal to join them for a meal. They ate simple food and drank a bitter liquid called coffee while discussing their plans for expanding the colony. They asked him questions about Zapirian culture and seemed genuinely interested in his answers. No species had ever shown such curiosity about the Empire before. Most either feared Zapirians too much to ask questions or tried to flatter them to gain favor. As Vextal prepared to return to his ship, Lisa Hayes made a request that surprised him. She asked if the humans could establish formal diplomatic contact with the Zapirian Empire. She spoke of mutual benefits and peaceful cooperation between their species. Her proposal showed either remarkable naivety or dangerous ambition. Vextal promised to relay her message to his superiors, knowing they would find it either amusing or insulting. Back on his ship, Vextal composed his first report about the humans. He described them as a primitive species with unusual persistence and curiosity. Their technology was weak, but they used it effectively. They showed no proper fear of superior beings and seemed to believe they could negotiate as equals with the mighty Zapirian Empire. He recommended continued observation before any final decisions were made about their fate. When Admiral Crexon received the report, he laughed until his scales rattled. The idea of primitive mammals thinking they could deal with Zapirians as equals was the most ridiculous thing he had heard in decades. He ordered Vextal to continue watching the humans, but assured him that the Empire would deal with this minor annoyance when convenient. The humans would learn their place in the galaxy soon enough. 3 months had passed since Vextal first encountered the humans at New Denver Colony. During this time, more human settlements had appeared throughout the outer rim of Zapirian space. Each colony seemed to choose the most difficult locations, possible as if humans enjoyed facing impossible challenges. The Empire's high command grew tired of these persistent mammals and decided to teach them a lesson they would never forget. Admiral Crexon assembled a battle fleet of 30 ships to attack the human settlements in the Proxima system. This force was more than enough to destroy every human vessel and colony in that region. The Admiral planned to broadcast the destruction across human space as a warning to others who might think they could ignore Zapirian authority. He assigned Vextal to observe the battle and document human reactions for intelligence purposes. The Zapirian fleet approached Proxima Station, where humans had built their largest outpost in the system. The station orbited a gas giant and served as a hub for mining operations on nearby moons. Intelligence reports showed it had minimal defenses and a population of about 5,000 humans. Against 30 advanced warships, it should have been destroyed in minutes. As the Zapirian ships dropped out of hyperspace near the station, Vextal watched for signs of human panic. He expected desperate surrender messages or frantic evacuation attempts. Instead, the humans responded with what seemed like organized military procedures. Their few defensive ships moved into formation around the station, while civilian vessels began departing in orderly groups. The human commander at Proxima Station was a man named Marcus Webb, who spoke to Admiral Crexon with the same calm confidence Vextal had seen before. Webb acknowledged that his forces could not match Zapirian firepower, but requested time to evacuate non-combatants from the station. The Admiral found this request amusing and agreed to wait 1 hour before beginning the attack. He wanted the humans to fully understand their hopeless situation. During the hour of grace, Vextal observed strange human behavior through his ship's sensors. Instead of panicking, the humans seemed to be following a detailed plan. Civilian ships, loaded with evacuees, did not flee randomly, but moved toward specific coordinates near an asteroid field. Military vessels took defensive positions that looked weak, but placed them in unusual formations around the station. When the hour ended, Admiral Crexon ordered the attack to begin. Zapirian plasma cannons opened fire on the human defensive fleet, with devastating effect. The primitive human ships with their metal hulls and chemical explosives stood no chance against advanced energy weapons. Within minutes, half the human fleet was destroyed, and the rest appeared to be retreating in disorder toward the asteroid field. The admiral ordered his ships to pursue the fleeing humans and finish them off completely. He wanted no survivors to carry word of this defeat back to Earth. The Zapirian fleet followed the human ships into the asteroid field, where they expected to easily complete their victory. Vextal felt almost sorry for the humans as he watched their desperate flight through the rocky maze of floating debris. Suddenly, the asteroid field exploded in a chain reaction of nuclear fire that lit up space like a newborn star. The humans had somehow planted explosive charges throughout the entire region and timed their retreat to lead the Zapirian ships into a massive trap. 20 of the 30 imperial vessels were destroyed instantly, while the others suffered severe damage. From the unexpected blast, Vextal stared in shock at his sensor readings as he tried to understand what had just happened. The humans had sacrificed their own station and defensive fleet to destroy most of the Zapirian attack force. No species in the galaxy had ever shown such tactical ruthlessness, combined with careful planning. The Empire had walked into a trap, set by beings they considered too primitive to pose any real threat. Admiral Crexon survived the explosion, but his flagship was badly damaged and barely capable of flight. His rage filled the communication channels as he demanded to know how. Primitive mammals had managed to outfight the mighty Zapirian Empire. The human response came from Marcus Webb, who was somehow still alive aboard a small ship hidden among the asteroids. Webb spoke with quiet satisfaction as he explained that humans had been preparing for this moment since their first contact with Zapirian forces. They had studied imperial tactics and noticed that Zapirian commanders always pursued fleeing enemies to ensure complete victory. The humans had used this predictable behavior against them by creating a trap that took advantage of standard Zapirian military doctrine. The human commander went on to reveal that they had been mining the asteroid field for months, not just for valuable minerals but to place nuclear charges in strategic locations. When they built Proxima Station, they had always known it might need to be sacrificed to protect other human colonies. Every person on the station had volunteered for this dangerous mission, knowing they might not survive. Vextal listened to Webb's explanation with growing amazement. The humans had planned this trap from the beginning and accepted terrible losses to achieve their goal. They showed a level of strategic thinking and personal sacrifice that challenged everything he believed about primitive species. Even more disturbing was the realization that humans had predicted Zapirian behavior better than Zapirians understood human thinking. As the surviving imperial ships limped away from the battle, Vextal began composing his report with hands that shook slightly. He described the tactical situation honestly but struggled to explain how humans had achieved such an impossible victory. Their technology was still primitive, and their ships were still weak, but they had used these limitations in ways that turned them into advantages. The most troubling aspect of the battle was how easily humans had sacrificed their own people and property for strategic gain. Zapirian culture valued individual survival and preserving resources above all else. The idea of deliberately destroying valuable assets to harm enemies was completely alien to imperial thinking, yet humans seemed to consider such sacrifice not only acceptable but necessary for victory. Vextal also noted how the humans had worked together during the crisis with perfect coordination, despite having no psychic connection between them. They communicated through primitive radio signals and visual displays, yet managed to execute complex plans flawlessly. Their emotional responses seemed to strengthen their resolve rather than cloud their judgment like Zapirian military theory predicted. When Admiral Crexon received Vextal's preliminary report, his reaction was predictable fury. He accused the humans of cowardly trickery and vowed that the Empire would return with overwhelming force to crush them completely. He dismissed the defeat as a lucky accident that would never happen again once Zapirian forces were properly prepared for human deception. But Vextal was not convinced that luck explained what he had witnessed. The humans had shown careful planning combined with tactical innovation that suggested dangerous intelligence. Their willingness to accept terrible losses for strategic advantage made them unlike any species the Empire had ever encountered. Most disturbing of all was their apparent ability to predict and manipulate Zapirian behavior. The battle at Proxima Station became known throughout the Empire as a minor setback caused by human treachery. High Command ordered increased security and warned all commanders to be cautious when dealing with these unpredictable mammals, but they still refused to consider humans a serious threat to imperial dominance in the galaxy. Vextal received new orders to continue observing human activities with increased attention to their military capabilities. His superiors wanted detailed information about human tactics and technology so the Empire could develop effective countermeasures. They were determined to ensure that no future battles would result in embarrassing defeats like the one at Proxima Station. As his ship moved toward the next human colony, Vextal found himself thinking about Marcus Webb's final message. The human commander had warned that the Empire would face much stronger resistance if they continued attacking innocent colonies. He claimed that humans would fight with increasing desperation and creativity to protect their people and their dreams of peaceful expansion. At the time, Vextal had dismissed these words as empty threats from a defeated enemy. But now, as he studied the tactical recordings of the battle, he began to wonder if the humans might be more dangerous than anyone in the Empire was willing to admit. Their victory at Proxima Station might not have been luck after all, but rather a glimpse of capabilities that Imperial intelligence had completely failed to recognize. 6 months had passed since the disaster at Proxima Station, and the war between humans and the Zapirian Empire had spread across 12 star systems. What Imperial High Command had expected to be a quick demonstration of power had become a grinding conflict that consumed ships and resources at an alarming rate. Vextal now found himself attached to Admiral Thexvar's fleet as they prepared for another major battle against human forces. The humans had not remained passive after their first victory. Instead of hiding in their remote colonies, they had begun launching coordinated attacks against Zapirian outposts and supply lines. Their tactics continued to confuse Imperial strategists who struggled to predict where the next assault would come from. Human forces seemed to appear from nowhere, strike hard and vanish before reinforcements could arrive. Today's battle would take place near the planet Kepler 442b, where humans had established a significant military base. Intelligence reports suggested they were using the planet to coordinate attacks throughout the region. Admiral Thexvar commanded 50 warships for this assault, believing that overwhelming force would finally crush human resistance once and for all. As the Zapirian fleet approached the planet, Vextal studied the tactical display showing human defensive positions. The enemy had arranged their ships in standard orbital formations around Kepler 442b, with energy shields activated and weapons ready. Their defensive setup looked conventional enough, but Vextal had learned to be suspicious of anything that seemed normal when dealing with humans. The human commander defending the planet was Captain Steve Martinez, who had earned a reputation for unconventional tactics during previous engagements. His service record showed he had once been a special operations soldier before taking command of the starship UCS Liberty. Admiral Thexvar dismissed Martinez as another primitive mammal who would learn the price of challenging Zapirian superiority. When the battle began, everything proceeded according to Imperial expectations. Zapirian plasma cannons opened fire on human positions, while energy shields deflected return fire from primitive kinetic weapons. The technology gap between the two species remained enormous, and human ships began taking heavy damage as expected. Several vessels exploded under the devastating firepower of advanced Imperial weapons. But Vextal noticed something strange in the pattern of human losses. The ships being destroyed seemed to be the oldest and least valuable vessels in their fleet, while newer ships remained protected behind their failing companions. This suggested the humans were deliberately sacrificing weaker units to preserve stronger ones rather than spreading damage evenly across their forces. Suddenly, the nature of the battle changed in a way that shocked every Zapirian officer watching. Instead of continuing their futile resistance against superior firepower, the human ships began accelerating directly toward Imperial vessels at maximum speed. Captain Martinez broadcast a simple message to his fleet that made Vextal's blood freeze in his veins. Martinez ordered his captains to use their ships as kinetic weapons and ram Zapirian vessels at near light speed. The humans had modified their engines to achieve tremendous velocity in short bursts, even though such acceleration would kill their crews within seconds. They were literally turning their own ships into guided missiles with living beings as the guidance systems. The first ramming attack came from a damaged human cruiser that had been limping away from the battle. Instead of retreating to safety, the ship suddenly reversed course and slammed into a Zapirian battleship at incredible speed. The impact destroyed both vessels instantly, but the psychological effect on Imperial crews was devastating. No species in galactic history had ever used suicide tactics on such a scale. More human ships followed the same tactic, diving towards Zapirian vessels with suicidal determination. The Imperial fleet tried to adapt their formations to avoid these attacks, but humans seemed to anticipate every defensive maneuver. Their remaining ships provided covering fire to help the ramming vessels reach their targets, while ground-based computers calculated optimal impact angles and timing. Admiral Thexvar ordered his fleet to retreat beyond the range of human ramming attacks, but the damage had already been done. 8 Imperial warships had been destroyed by human suicide vessels, while dozens more suffered severe damage from near misses and debris impacts. The Zapirian fleet that had approached Kepler 442b with confident superiority was now struggling to maintain formation, but the humans were not finished with their surprises. As Zapirian ships pulled back to a safer distance, new contacts appeared on sensor screens throughout the system. Human reinforcements were arriving from multiple directions, using flight paths that seemed impossible given their known ship capabilities. Somehow they had developed new propulsion technology, or found ways to make their existing engines perform far beyond rated specifications. The leader of the human reinforcements was a woman named Helen Brooks, who commanded a vessel called the UCS Innovation. Her ship looked different from standard human designs, with unusual hull modifications and energy signatures that confused Zapirian sensors. When she opened communications with Captain Martinez, her first words revealed the source of recent human tactical improvements. Brooks explained that human engineers had been studying captured Zapirian technology and reverse engineering Imperial systems for their own use. They could not fully duplicate advanced Zapirian weapons, but they had learned to combine alien technology with human innovations in ways that created unexpected capabilities. The new human ships were hybrids that used the best features of both species' designs. More disturbing to Vextal was Brooks's casual mention of artificial intelligence systems that helped coordinate human fleet movements. The Empire had banned such technology centuries ago after experiencing problems with machine consciousness, but humans seemed to have solved those issues. Their computer systems could process tactical data and predict enemy movements with accuracy that rivaled Zapirian psychic abilities. As the battle continued, Vextal watched human forces demonstrate learning capabilities that challenged everything he understood about warfare. When Zapirian ships used a particular defensive formation, human computers immediately calculated countermeasures and transmitted new tactics to all friendly vessels. The humans were literally evolving their military doctrine in real time during the middle of combat. Captain Martinez coordinated ground operations that showed human endurance beyond anything recorded in Imperial databases. His troops survived in environments that would kill most galactic species within hours, using terrain and weather as weapons against technologically superior enemies. They fought in toxic atmospheres, frozen wastelands, and radiation zones that Imperial soldiers needed heavy protective gear to enter. The human ground commander was a sergeant named Amy Johnson, who specialized in demolitions and unconventional warfare. Her teams moved through hostile terrain with equipment that seemed impossibly light, yet somehow allowed them to survive conditions that should have been lethal. When Zapirian forces attempted to land on the planet, they found every potential landing site either trapped or defended by humans who appeared immune to environmental hazards. Johnson's tactics included using the planet itself as a weapon against invading forces. Her teams triggered avalanches, redirected rivers, and even caused volcanic eruptions to stop Zapirian advances. The humans seemed to view every aspect of their environment as a potential tool for warfare, rather than just background terrain to fight across. Admiral Thexavar finally ordered a full retreat when his fleet had lost nearly half its ships to human attacks. The battle for Kepler 442b had become another humiliating defeat for the supposedly superior Zapirian Empire. As Imperial forces limped away from the system, Vextal composed another report that he knew his superiors would not want to read. The humans had demonstrated abilities that went far beyond anything previously documented about their species. They showed technological adaptation, psychological resilience, and tactical creativity that made them unlike any enemy the Empire had ever faced. Most troubling was their apparent willingness to sacrifice everything, including their own lives, to achieve military objectives. Vextal's report included detailed analysis of human ramming tactics and their implications for future battles. No Zapirian commander would ever again feel safe assuming that damaged enemy ships were retreating from combat. The humans had turned their own apparent weakness into a devastating weapon that could destroy much larger and more advanced vessels. He also documented the rapid improvement in human technology and their ability to integrate captured Zapirian systems with their own designs. The Empire's technological advantage was shrinking with each engagement as humans learned from every encounter and applied those lessons immediately. Their artificial intelligence systems gave them coordination capabilities that matched or exceeded Zapirian psychic communication. When High Command received Vextal's report, their reaction was predictable denial and anger. They accused him of exaggerating human capabilities and suggested that he was losing his objectivity after too much exposure to enemy propaganda. 1 year had passed since the first human contact, and the war had reached the core worlds, threatening systems the Zapirian Empire had controlled for over 2 millennia. What began as a simple police action against primitive mammals had become an existential crisis that shook the foundations of imperial power. Vextal now served aboard the flagship of Grand Admiral Zekthar as the Empire prepared its ultimate response to human aggression. The humans had done the impossible by advancing through heavily defended Imperial space to threaten Zephyr Prime itself. Their fleet had grown from a handful of primitive vessels to a massive armada that incorporated captured Zapirian technology with human innovations. Intelligence reports suggested they commanded over 300 warships, plus countless support vessels and troop transports. Leading this unprecedented human offensive was Admiral Kate Sullivan, who had earned the nickname Iron Kate among Zapirian commanders for her relentless tactical brilliance. Her flagship UCS Determination had become a symbol of human persistence that struck fear into Imperial crews throughout the galaxy. Sullivan commanded respect even from enemies who considered her species inferior in every measurable way. Grand Admiral Zekthar had assembled the largest Imperial fleet in history to defend Zephyr Prime. Nearly 800 warships surrounded the homeworld, along with orbital defense platforms that could destroy entire enemy fleets. The planet's surface bristled with weapons that had never been tested in actual combat, because no enemy had ever come close to threatening the Imperial capital. As the human fleet approached the Zephyr system, Vextal studied their formation through advanced sensors that revealed disturbing details about enemy capabilities. Human ships now carried energy shields that rivaled Imperial technology, and their weapons had evolved far beyond primitive kinetic projectiles. Some vessels showed design features that seemed to combine the best aspects of multiple galactic species engineering. The human assault began with what appeared to be a conventional frontal attack against the outer defense perimeter. Admiral Sullivan's forces engaged Zapirian patrol fleets with tactics that seemed almost predictable compared to previous human surprises. Imperial commanders felt confident that they were finally facing human forces in a straightforward battle, where superior numbers and technology would ensure victory. But Vextal had learned to be suspicious when humans appeared to be using conventional tactics. He monitored communication intercepts and sensor data, looking for signs of the inevitable surprise that human commanders always seemed to have prepared. His attention focused on strange energy readings from several human ships that did not match any known weapon or defense system. The true nature of the human plan became clear when a man named Tony Garcia transmitted a brief coded message to all human vessels. Garcia served as Admiral Sullivan's intelligence specialist, and his background included extensive training in what humans called cyber warfare. His message triggered simultaneous attacks on Zapirian communication networks throughout the entire system. Within minutes, Imperial command and control systems began failing as human computer viruses infiltrated military networks that had been considered absolutely secure. Zapirian ships found themselves cut off from fleet coordination, while ground-based defense systems received conflicting orders that caused chaos in their targeting protocols. The humans had somehow learned to wage war in cyberspace as well as physical space. Even more shocking was the effect on Zapirian psychic communication abilities. Human ships began broadcasting some kind of interference that disrupted the mental connections Imperial crews used to coordinate their actions. For the first time in their history, Zapirian forces found their greatest natural advantage turned into a liability, as psychic static filled their minds with painful noise. Admiral Sullivan exploited the confusion by launching simultaneous attacks from multiple directions using tactics that seemed to anticipate every Zapirian defensive move. Her forces struck weak points in Imperial formations with precision that suggested detailed knowledge of Zapirian military doctrine. Human commanders appeared to understand Imperial psychology better than many Zapirian officers understood themselves. The architect of this psychological warfare was a human scientist named Sam Parker, who had been studying captured Zapirian prisoners to understand how Imperial minds worked. His research had revealed patterns in Zapirian thinking that could be predicted and manipulated through careful application of specific stimuli. Parker had essentially created a manual for fighting Zapirian forces more effectively than they could fight themselves. As the battle progressed, Vextal watched Imperial formations collapse under coordinated human attacks that targeted command ships and communication nodes. The humans showed detailed knowledge of Zapirian ship designs and used this information to strike at critical systems with devastating accuracy. They had learned to fight the Empire using the Empire's own strengths against it. Grand Admiral Zekthar ordered his reserve fleets to counterattack, but found his commands blocked by the ongoing cyber warfare assault. Human hackers, led by Garcia, had penetrated so deeply into Imperial networks that they could monitor Zapirian battle plans in real time and adjust their own tactics accordingly. The Empire was fighting an enemy that could predict their every move. The decisive moment came when human forces reached the inner system and began their final approach to Zephyr Prime. Instead of bombarding the planet from orbit, Admiral Sullivan transmitted a surrender demand that shocked every Imperial officer who heard it. She offered to spare the homeworld in exchange for complete Zapirian capitulation and recognition of human sovereignty over all disputed territories. Grand Admiral Zekthar rejected the demand with outrage that such primitive beings would dare threaten the capital of galactic civilization. He ordered planetary defense systems to open fire on the approaching human fleet, regardless of potential damage to orbital installations or civilian populations. The Empire would never surrender to mammals that had crawled out of their gravity well only decades ago. But when the defense systems attempted to fire, nothing happened. Human cyber warfare teams had spent hours infiltrating planetary networks and had gained control of every major weapons platform around Zephyr Prime. The mighty Imperial homeworld sat helpless before an enemy fleet that could destroy it at will, but chose instead to demand surrender. The final phase of the battle involved human ground forces led by a woman named Lisa Chen, who commanded the occupation of key Imperial facilities. Her troops moved through Zephyr Prime's cities with discipline that impressed even enemy observers, as they secured government buildings and military installations without unnecessary destruction. The humans seemed more interested in capturing the Empire intact than destroying it. General Chen's forces demonstrated abilities that challenged every assumption about human limitations. They operated effectively in Zephyr Prime's alien environment, using equipment that somehow allowed them to breathe the planet's atmosphere and tolerate its unusual gravity. Human soldiers showed endurance and adaptability that let them function in conditions no other species could survive without extensive technological support. The occupation forces included specialists who immediately began studying Zapirian technology and culture with an enthusiasm that reminded Vextal of human behavior during first contact. Instead of looting or destroying captured facilities, the humans seemed genuinely interested in understanding how imperial society functioned. They treated Zapirian civilians with unexpected respect, while maintaining firm control over strategic assets. Within hours of the initial landing, human engineers were working alongside captured Zapirian technicians to restore damaged infrastructure and maintain essential services. This cooperation between former enemies shocked Imperial observers who expected typical conquest behavior involving exploitation and brutality. The humans appeared to view their victory as an opportunity for learning, rather than revenge. Admiral Sullivan's final message to Grand Admiral Zekthar offered terms that no Zapirian leader could have imagined. Instead of demanding tribute or territory, she proposed a formal alliance between humans and the Empire, based on mutual respect and shared technology. Her conditions included immediate cessation of hostilities and establishment of joint research programs to benefit both species. The Grand Admiral's response was predictable rage and refusal to negotiate with beings he considered inferior upstart mammals. But his defiance rang hollow when his flagship sat powerless in orbit around his own homeworld, while human forces controlled every major installation on the planet's surface. The empire that had ruled the galaxy for millennia found itself at the mercy of creatures they had dismissed as weak only months before. Vextal composed his final battle report, knowing it would mark the end of Zapirian dominance in the galaxy. The humans had achieved total victory, not through superior firepower, but through adaptability, innovation, and an understanding of their enemies that exceeded anything in Imperial military history. They had turned every Zapirian advantage into a weakness while using their own apparent limitations as sources of strength. The fall of Zephyr Prime represented more than military defeat. It demonstrated that the Empire's fundamental assumptions about galactic hierarchy were wrong. 18 months had passed since the fall of Zephyr Prime, and Vextal stood in the same observation chamber where he had first dismissed humans as primitive mammals. Now he wore the insignia of a liaison officer serving the new Interspecies Council that governed what had once been the Zapirian Empire. The galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted when this conflict began. The human occupation of imperial worlds had proceeded with a restraint that continued to surprise former Zapirian officials. Instead of the brutal suppression most species expected after conquest, humans had established cooperative governments that included representatives from both civilizations. President Ellen Rodriguez led the new administration with policies that emphasized rebuilding rather than exploitation. Rodriguez was unlike any leader Vextal had encountered during his military career. She spoke multiple galactic languages fluently and showed genuine interest in understanding Zapirian culture and history. Her background included diplomatic service and academic research in interspecies relations, which prepared her for the complex task of merging two very different civilizations into a functional partnership. The process of integration had revealed the true scope of human capabilities that Imperial intelligence had failed to recognize. Ambassador John Mitchell worked with Vextal to establish trade agreements that benefited both species while respecting cultural differences that had seemed insurmountable only months before. Mitchell possessed patience and creativity that turned former enemies into productive partners. Human reconstruction efforts were led by General Lisa Chen, whose occupation forces had evolved into engineering teams that repaired war damage throughout former Imperial territory. Her approach emphasized cooperation with local populations rather than top-down control that most conquerors preferred. Chen treated defeated Zapirians as valuable partners whose knowledge and skills were essential for successful reconstruction. The transformation of galactic society became most apparent in joint research facilities where humans and Zapirians worked together on projects that neither species could complete alone. Human creativity combined with Zapirian technological sophistication produced innovations that advanced both civilizations beyond anything they had achieved separately. These collaborations demonstrated the potential of cooperative rather than competitive relationships. Vextal's role as liaison officer required him to travel throughout the former empire, documenting the transition from military occupation to civilian government. Every world he visited showed evidence of human organizational abilities that had been invisible during the war. but were crucial for managing complex galactic civilization. Humans seemed naturally gifted at creating systems that allowed different species to work together effectively. The most remarkable aspect of human governance was their approach to former enemies who had fought against them during the war. Instead of seeking revenge or punishment, humans offered opportunities for Zapirian officers and officials to serve in the new government structure. This forgiveness extended even to military commanders who had ordered attacks on human colonies and civilians. Admiral Kate Sullivan now served as head of the Interspecies Defense Force, where she worked alongside former Imperial officers to maintain peace throughout the galaxy. Her integration of Zapirian tactical knowledge with human strategic thinking produced military doctrines that emphasized protection of civilians and peaceful resolution of conflicts rather than conquest and domination. The economic transformation of former imperial worlds proved equally dramatic as human traders established commercial networks that connected previously isolated regions. Their approach to business emphasized mutual benefit and long-term relationships rather than short-term exploitation that had characterized imperial economic policy. Human merchants seemed to understand that sustainable prosperity required treating partners fairly. Dr. Karen Walsh led scientific exchanges that revealed the full extent of human intellectual capabilities. Her teams worked with Zapirian researchers to solve problems that had challenged imperial science for centuries. Human approaches to investigation and experimentation complemented Zapirian theoretical knowledge in ways that accelerated discovery and innovation beyond anything either species had achieved alone. As Vexatal studied human society, he began to understand why they had succeeded where the mighty empire had failed. Their short lifespans made them value time differently than long-lived Zapirians, who often delayed decisions for decades. Humans approached problems with urgency and creativity that produced rapid solutions while Zapirians became trapped in endless analysis and debate. The emotional nature that imperial psychologists had identified as a human weakness proved to be their greatest strength. Human feelings drove them to extraordinary efforts for causes they believed in, while Zapirian logic led to careful calculations that missed opportunities for dramatic achievement. Love, loyalty, and hope motivated humans to attempt impossible tasks and somehow succeed through determination alone. Human lack of psychic abilities forced them to develop superior communication and cooperation skills that made their organizations more flexible and efficient than imperial bureaucracies. They had learned to share information and coordinate activities through technology and personal relationships, rather than relying on mental connections that could be disrupted or manipulated. The physical limitations that made humans seem weak, compared to other galactic species, had actually prepared them to survive in hostile environments that would kill most beings. Their homeworld was so dangerous that humans developed adaptability and endurance that let them thrive on planets other species considered uninhabitable. Earth had trained them for the harsh realities of galactic expansion. Most importantly, humans viewed diversity as a source of strength rather than weakness. They welcomed different perspectives and approaches that other species rejected as threats to social stability. This openness to new ideas allowed them to learn from every encounter and adapt their methods to changing circumstances. Humans grew stronger through contact with other species, while most civilizations became more rigid and insular. The new Interspecies Council met regularly to address challenges facing the transformed galaxy, and Vextal attended these sessions as an observer and advisor. He watched human and Zapirian representatives work together on issues that would have caused wars during imperial rule. Their ability to find compromise solutions impressed him more than any military victory. President Rodriguez often consulted with former imperial officials about policy decisions affecting Zapirian worlds. Her inclusive approach to governance created loyalty among former enemies who had expected to be marginalized or persecuted after defeat. This wisdom and victory demonstrated political sophistication that equaled human tactical brilliance during the war. The creation of joint colonies represented the ultimate symbol of successful integration between former enemies. Human and Zapirian families lived together on worlds that showcased the best features of both civilizations. These communities proved that cooperation could produce results superior to anything either species achieved through independent effort. 5. Years after the fall of the Empire, Vextal found himself writing a final report about human capabilities for the historical archives of the Interspecies Council. His analysis concluded that humanity's greatest achievement was not military victory, but their ability to transform conquest into partnership. They had shown that true strength came from building up others rather than tearing them down. The galaxy, that had once dismissed humans as weak primitive mammals, now studied their methods and tried to understand how such an apparently disadvantaged species had revolutionized interstellar civilization. Universities throughout known space offered courses in human history and philosophy, while military academies analyzed their tactical innovations. Vextal's report included recommendations for future contact with unknown species based on lessons learned from humanity's rise to prominence. He emphasized the importance of avoiding assumptions about alien capabilities and the need to look beyond surface appearances when evaluating potential threats or partners. The Empire's failure to understand humans had cost them everything they had built over millennia. The document concluded with Vextal's personal reflection on how humanity had changed his understanding of strength and weakness. He had learned that adaptability mattered more than technology, that cooperation achieved more than domination, and that hope could overcome seemingly impossible obstacles. Humans had proven that the most dangerous enemies might appear as the weakest friends. As he submitted his final report, Vextal looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere among them, other species were making first contact with human explorers. He wondered if they would make the same mistake the Empire had made by dismissing these remarkable beings as too primitive to matter. Those who underestimated humanity did so at their own peril. The humans had taught the galaxy that true power came not from superior weapons or advanced technology, but from the willingness to sacrifice for others and the wisdom to turn enemies into allies.